What's up, CFFers? This is Chris Dortch Sr., Assistant Festival Director, and I'm stoked to be joined by Mark Pellington, a talented filmmaker who has, to say the least, a vast, varied, and compelling body of work. This year, we're fortunate enough to present two films by Mark, one a documentary, another scripted, and he's taken a few minutes out of his busy schedule to speak with us about these films. This is Buzz and the Mothman Prophecies, and some of his other work, including music videos. Mark, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here and be able to show two quite diverse pieces of work. So I'm excited.
Well, we appreciate it. And I got lucky to draw this assignment in part because I'm the only member of our team who can remember or was even around at the dawn of the MTV era. It was 1981. I was a young sports writer, my first newspaper job. And several nights after we got off work, which is, 12 or 1 o'clock, we'd go over to the city editor's apartment and we would stare in slack-jawed wonder at MTV. And it wasn't just the videos. Over the years, these promotional videos, which were cutting edge and cool, attracted us too. And lo and behold, those were created by you. So that brings me to my first question. Your journey to Buzz has been anything but linear. In the film, you called yourself a preppy jock who had zero training in the arts. Yet after you graduated from the University of Virginia, you went to work for MTV. You've been cranking out these promotional videos. You graduated to music videos and made more than 100, some iconic, some with music legends, including Bruce Springsteen, Pearl Jam, Michael Jackson, U2, REM, Foo Fighters, Dave Matthews Band, and many others. Then came the trailblazing MTV show Buzz. How did you get from preppy jock to Buzz?
Well, I can say I was in New York in the 80s, and New York in the 80s was a very, very different experience than New York now. I mean, on a lot of levels. The world was very different then. Remember, kids and old timers, this was before the internet, right? Before computers, before cell phones. So the language of, I fell into an internship at MTV when I was at UVA, and I knew what I knew at UVA, which was lacrosse and DJing. I was really into music and journalism, and was in a fraternity and played lacrosse and just kind of like living my life there. And then when I got the internship at MTV, New York City in 1983 really blew my doors open, because I was experiencing like hip hop and punk rock and a whole other lifestyle up there that I had never experienced in the enclaves of Charlottesville, Virginia. Had some friends from Chattanooga and had a lot of nice Southern boys, and would party in the fraternities with a lovely girl from Memphis named Kyle Tabor. And just like, we had a great time. But New York City was what New York City was. And so kind of being thrown into working at MTV, my love of music and my love of journalism kind of just took over. I did what any 23-year-old does. You just do what they tell you and just keep working and working and learning the trade. And what I learned was I really like to edit. And I really like to edit and images from different people's videos that you'd see every day. And we're like, oh, I like that shot and I like that shot. And you'd say, like, how come that's not on the air? How come this isn't being seen? So the channel was really beginning to identify itself then. It was only 2 years old. The executives were like 6 or 7 years older than we were. Everybody was on one floor. It was very, very renegade. It was very much like a startup, right? Yet it was really captivating the world as it gave a chance for this form of music video, and these British bands like Flock of Seagulls and Adam and the Ants and the Stray Cats, and all these bands got a chance to showcase their music and their look. So the look and the music became equally important. And therefore the style of a video and the role of excuse me, and the role of a video director became very instrumental in the shaping of that image, because that image in the video really spurred record sales and radio airplay. It wasn't an afterthought. It was like, if it was a cool video and MTV played it, radio stations in Kansas City and Austin, Texas, and Dubuque, Iowa, and Seattle, Washington were playing the song. So it was a massive, 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 time when music was controlled by record companies and radio stations. Now, artists have so much more input into their career and shaping it, and Spotify, and everybody can listen to anything they want at any time. Well, that's not the way it used to be. Not everybody has the world's music library at their fingertips. So technology plays a big role in the evolution of MTV, and ultimately for me of just continuing to do videos on the weekends, De La Soul. We just could go do a music video on a weekend and go back to work. Ultimately, in 1989, so I'd been there 6 years, Buzz was the combination and culmination of all that work. How do you take these 10-second, 30-second little kind of collage pieces that were dropped into the streaming world of MTV, which it was just streaming videos and news pieces well before they had shows or anything like that. And Buzz was this attempt at MTV as it was going global. MTV was going to be trying MTV Europe, MTV Asia, MTV Australia. So as the Berlin Wall comes down and things start to expand, and the American imprint culturally and fiscally started to expand, and American corporations could start to go and be elsewhere, MTV was one of them. And they said, well, maybe we need a magazine show, global magazine show. So my partner, John Klein, had an idea for a magazine show. I had an idea for a weirdo show that was nonlinear, that could take music from around the world and people talking from around the world and kind of chop it all up, because I felt that's where the world was headed in terms of this like nonlinear multi-channel universe. And that was just influenced by stuff in New York and just kind of being turned on to that way of thinking. I wasn't a tech person. I didn't know shit about computers. But so I was 28, John was 29, and we made this pilot, and they said, this is cool, let's make a show. So Buzz was this show that was on Sunday nights after 120 minutes, which I founded, of alternative music show. And it was this half-hour weird mind blast that kind of showed you the world, showed you music, ideas. The only equivalent I can tell you now is it's like flipping around the internet really fast or on your phone and gobbling up things for like 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here, 2 minutes here. And that's what Buzz did. We did that. We were an aggregator before the word aggregator was invented. We chopped stuff up from around the world, cut it up, and spit it back at you in a very curated, singular way. And it had a lot of music. It was really aggressive, but it was very human. It was kind of funny and subversive and weird. And MTV was like, great. And they put it out there. And then after 13 episodes, they canceled it. They're like, you're weird, depressing, and expensive. You can't be all three. Well, that pretty much goes to prove, like in this day and age, there was no data, there was no algorithms, there was no research groups, there was nobody. They just were like, well, it's a little weird. And they were beginning to get into ratings, and it gets low ratings. And I said, well, you don't promote it. Nobody knows it's on. So how the fuck do you get good ratings? Didn't matter. We were 3,000 miles away making a show that we thought was cool. And it came out and it influenced like U2, Zoo TV, it influenced a lot of TV and commercials and the media world for a long time in the 90s. And then the computer and smartphones took over everything. Cut to COVID. And I'm like bored during COVID. And a friend said, you should do Buzz again. I said, what do you mean? He said, you should do the show again. I said, well, I don't know about that. But I looked into the rights to the shows, and I got an hour's worth of footage for $10,000, which is pretty cheap. And I set out to make a documentary. And now 5 years later, This Is Buzz tells the story of the show, how it came together, what we did, how we did it. It shows a lot of the show, the kind of backstory to it, and tells the people who participated in it, including you two, telling the story of this weird show that had its heart in the right place, that came out and and ultimately kind of predicted a lot of the world we live in now. It was very prescient in how it was put together and what it was talking about. And so a great company called Antenna is going to release the film. And so the festival, the Chattanooga Festival, is one of the first places in the world that will see the film. And the best thing is for people to dig the show and to watch the film and dig it and go on social media and tell people. And we're just building our website and Instagram presence, and trailers are going to start coming out. And so that, in a short way, is the story of Buzz, the backstory of Buzz, and how the film came about.
It's interesting that you use the word prescient, because that was going to be in my next question. I thought Buzz was eerily prescient, and so did some of the people you interviewed. The writer Chris Gore said, Buzz was trying to make you think. We're living now the dystopian future that the 80s and 90s movies warned us about. The Edge from U2 said, we didn't realize it was prophetic of where things were going to go. While you were creating the show, did you and John Klein ever think that you were essentially giving us a glimpse of our future?
Well, yes, because William Gibson, the sci-fi writer, was definitely a big influence. We met him, we knew him, J.G. Ballard, his work. John was very, very, very turned on to these guys and knew what the predictions of the future were. I mean, we do a piece on 1989 on virtual reality and hackers. I mean, at that time, that was sci-fi. That was like, hackers, what are you hacking? Right? So now when you look at it, it's super, super, super radical that the world we were talking about, like any sci-fi, I think any sci-fi kind of peeks its way into the near future, and that's what we were doing. And I give that credit to John, because John was the voracious reader. He knew about that. It's only when you look back at it, like, Ted Koppel from ABC News talking about, how many second, like the technological ability of the computers back in 1988. I mean, it's kind of like a joke.
Yeah.
But yes, it's that same way people making things now about AI in the future. And oh my God, it's like, well, yeah, the technology leads us to these places that we don't know where it's headed.
In my research for this talk, I came across a video where you shared memories of your father, Bill Pellington, who was an all-pro linebacker for the Baltimore Colts. It wasn't a Super Bowl back then, but he won 2 NFL titles in 58 and 59. Near the end of the video, you listed some traits that your father passed on to you: truth seeker, tenacity, ferocious perseverance. It seems to me that's exactly what you needed to make a show that was described in This Is Buzz as, this is not television that is meant to be relaxing or to coddle you. Can you talk about your father's impact on your life and career?
Well, my dad played football in a different time. From 1953 to 1964, he hitchhiked, which kids was when you would put your thumb out, you'd stand on the side of the road, you'd put your thumb out, and people would pick you up and drive you thousands of miles to your destination. Like, friendly people would pick you up before, like, serial killers would kill you.
Exactly. You wouldn't do that now.
So my dad hitchhiked to Baltimore and made the Baltimore Colts. And I think his perseverance and his abilities to kind of just have a very stand-up career as a football player without any regard to glory or kind of big awards was a big influence on me in terms of like, because I played sports and did okay, but I was never like some superstar. But being part of a team and being disciplined and having goals and a work ethic were always the way I was raised, and kind of the foundation of from school and sports. I'd say sports were a huge influence. They were as much of an influence as my father was in terms of, sacrificing and losing weight in wrestling or being goal oriented or whatever it was. Played lacrosse at Virginia. And, so I think those character traits of have served me well. They served me well in making Buzz, because we just were like, all right, well, we're just going to go do it and kind of do an outside of the box idea and trust our instincts. Yeah. Sports and creativity are very similar. If you trust your instincts, that's all you have. And I kind of did that all through my career at MTV and Buzz and afterwards and in New York. And then when I moved out here, I would say, well, I'm going to trust my instincts and just keep doing it till they tell me I suck, and then I'll go home. And I would joke, I'd say, just move to Los Angeles to have people tell you that you suck, So, but like in that way, the world changed, and then, like criticism changed, and then the internet comes, and every Tom, Dick, or Harry with a wine shop is a film critic, or every comment becomes equal to criticism,
right.
So you start to go to the quantified ratings kind of culture. But it doesn't matter. You do the work, a documentary, a music video, a commercial, a movie, you just keep doing the work. And Hollywood and movie making and independent filmmaking and all the businesses over all the years are ultimately about somebody saying no to you. You write a treatment, the band says no. You bid for a commercial, they say no. But you get enough wins along the way to keep you going. And I would work in all the different mediums, and for 30 years, I had a pretty good run. COVID kind of derailed it. And technology kind of changed things, right? For a lot of people. For a lot of people who came up in the arts in the 90s and early 2000s, it started to narrow down. The corporations, fewer movies made, fewer movies like Arlington Road or Mothman are made, fewer movies of that budget size are made, fewer TV shows on broadcast like Cold Case and Blind Spot. But it doesn't matter. I'm very grateful for the career. Music videos changed, right? So, but I just made a great video for an unknown band called the International Drug Lords. It's a $10,000 video that's part of it's AI, part of it's regular footage. I love it. It's one of my most exciting things. I should send it to you guys and let you premiere it on at the festival, because it's the same energy as the early MTV days. The track sounds like it's from 1995, and it's the same kind of like, I love music. And I think what I got from my father was just determination. And people say no to you, and you say, okay, well, you just keep going. You keep going, trying to get a movie going, try to get whatever it is going. You got to keep going, because if you say no, then that's it. You're done.
Right.
They win, you lose.
It's incredible to me that MTV didn't see the value of Buzz. It was buried on Sunday nights, barely promoted, and on a network that showed videos endlessly, was never repeated. Even today, I find out there's not even a freaking Wikipedia reference. One of the best and most telling quotes near the end of the movie was this: whereas Buzz presented a view of gritty reality, a real reality, what MTV chose instead was scripted reality. And that was the beginning of the end of MTV's relevance. Buzz lasted, as you said, 13 episodes. Was it too far ahead of its time?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because what you realize is the people who are the real gatekeepers The people who open up and create new things, it's the next people who open it up and get it into the mainstream. U2, Zoo TV, Vice. These are the kind of things that took the language of buzz and the ideas of buzz and kind of softened it and brought it to a mainstream. Also, we were 4 or 5 years ahead of our time technologically. I think if MTV had seen the value of that, you could balance scripted and cult things, right? Because as he says also in the movie, he goes, look, we also like to do radical, weird things, and there could have been a balance. And I think what they were doing was we just were so far to the extreme, and we were really pushing the boundaries that even if they had watered us down, it still would have been an interesting show. But we didn't get that chance.
Yeah.
The credits to our film, the closing credits to our film, are an AI voice reading the letter that we wrote to our executive, talking about the philosophy of the show and why we felt like we deserved another chance. Yet it was also very much like keeping our bar high in terms of the aesthetic and the integrity. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything, right? I mean, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. And I was very grateful that we had the chance to make it. Yet at the same time, I think that was a pivotal moment when MTV, let's go that way. Now, they were very successful with Jersey Shore and Real World and then TRL. And MTV kind of always was able to adapt through the 90s. And music videos took a back seat, but I kept doing music videos throughout my whole career. I think it was more about 2008 when they gave up the music in music television. That was the nail in the coffin. But I think that it had started to drift from the early promise of it when Buzz got canceled. Now again, there was MTV in the 80s. 90s and 2000s. There were 3 distinct eras.
Right.
And so the people who were younger than me that grew up on, Pearl Jam and then into TRL, MTV has a very, very strong hold on them because I think the music and music videos were still a predominant form, even through Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and stuff like that. Videos were still very, very impactful culturally. I think it was after, really after the rise of the smartphone and the 2006 that they just started to drift away.
Yeah. That leads me perfectly to my next question. I wanted to ask you about your video work a little bit. Again, in researching this conversation, I heard you interviewed on the Movie Crypt podcast, and you talked about writing treatments for music videos. Were those written after speaking with the artist about their vision for the video, or did you hear a song and get a picture in your head of how the video needed to serve the song?
I would say 90% of the time, it's always good to talk to the artist. And sometimes the artist has a lot to say and a lot of very specific ideas and a great vision. Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
I heard the song. I had seen their videos. I had seen Alive and the other 2 kind of live videos they did, Even Flow. I was like, yeah, they're cool. I kind of was more into Nirvana at the time.
Yeah.
And I heard Jeremy, and I was like, well, this is quite a cinematic song. And they said, will you talk to Eddie? And I spoke to Eddie, and he told me the truth of the story. Yeah. And then that really opened up a lot of experience for me in terms of how I felt as a kid. And I wasn't bullied, but I saw bullying, and I had frustrations with my parents and things and felt certain ways and was able to put in a lot of that very surreal kind of personal imagery into it that's laced throughout the story of the kid. So I'd say
Right.
that was a kind of treatment that I wrote that was very personal and very interpretive of a singular artist's point of view. Demi Lovato also had a very, very good relationship with her, where she would say, this is what the song's about, and this is what she was going through. And I would kind of customize my treatment for her and work with her on that, like the way a filmmaker and a writer co-direct
Sure.
or co-write something. Other times, the majority of the time, I'd get the track and just let my brain go and write what I wrote. And usually they dug it and I would go make it. And that was 90% of the time. Sometimes they didn't even know really what it was about, but they trusted me. Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters, or Dave Matthews and Gravedigger. Like, so you'd have these conversations with artists of that stature, and they would trust you to interpret it. Springsteen, talked to him on the phone. My rep said, Bruce wants to talk to 3 filmmakers about doing some videos. This is right after The Rising came out in 2001. So I go see him at the LA Forum before his show there, and I go and I knock on, they're like, I'm here to see Bruce. And they walk down this thing, and I go into this big empty room, and his manager, John Landau, introduces me to Bruce, and I go over and I meet him. No, I'd liked Springsteen before, but I wasn't like a rabid, like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
getting on my knees, you know. We ended up talking about the Jersey Shore, where I had spent my summers, Alzheimer's. His father-in-law had dementia. My dad had dementia. We talked about children, parenting, the Jersey Shore, dementia. We didn't talk about the video or the song once. He got to know me a little bit. 30 minutes later, he goes, all right, I got to go do a show. And I said, all right, nice to meet you. And I went out and I watched 3 songs and I left because my wife had just had a baby. And I was like, okay. And I get home the next day, they said, Bruce wants to work with you. I was
Wow.
like, okay, cool. So what he did was he went on the song Lonesome Day. He goes, I want a story, but I don't want a plot. There's a beginning, middle, and an end. So he was very much in the 3-act structure. And there's despair and struggle and isolation and loneliness. Then it goes through determination and resilience and fighting to completion and redemption and hope. Right. So we go to Jersey and shoot 3 days of imagery and found stuff and created stuff. And it went into these 3 buckets, and that was it. So you really trust your interpretive instincts. And if it doesn't work out, you know when you're writing it. If it doesn't pour out of me, it doesn't happen.
I wanted to ask you about the other film that we're presenting for the festival, The Mothman Prophecies. It's one of my all-time favorites. This is so weird. Last Friday, my oldest grandson, in the middle of an ordinary conversation, came out of left field when he asked me what my favorite cryptid was. And I thought that's so funny he asked, because I'm about to have a conversation with the filmmaker who brought my favorite cryptid into the public consciousness.
I know John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, a true story, came out in 1975, but your film is credited with making Mothman maybe not as big as Bigfoot, but certainly a significant part of cryptid lore. What made you want to tell that story?
I didn't watch the X-Files. That was not on my radar at all in terms of like subject matter that I knew about. It wasn't like, oh, I was really into that stuff, and thank God here's the movie to do it. Tell you what, the company that made Arlington Road had been developing the script based on Keel's book. And they sent me this script right as we were finishing Arlington Road and said, we think this would be great for you. I hadn't made a thrill. I mean, I hadn't made a scary movie or anything like that, but they had faith in me. And I read it and I said, I like it, but I don't want to do a movie right away. So 6 months later, they came back and said, hey, we did a rewrite. It's really scary. There was all this stuff of like the monster and like you see Mothman and Mothman does this. And I'm like, all right. And I passed. And 3 months later, they said, we did a new draft, even more scary. And I was like, it's less interesting than the first thing you gave me. So I went back to the original draft, and the connection was this. My father had Alzheimer's in the early 90s. I saw my father actively hallucinate, right? My father would pick up the phone with his hand and talk to somebody he knew from 7th grade.
Wow.
And, oh, hey, Bubba, what are you doing? And I was like, my father's talking to his hand to his 7th grade friend. That's his brain.
Right.
That's the dementia. That's the power of the brain to see and imagine anything that it wants. So I always understood perception, the power of perception, the power of the mind, right? So when I'm reading the thing, I'm like, they hear a sound, they think they see something. It's imagination, right? You never seen a photo of real photo of a UFO, right? Where there are pictures of Bigfoot. Like what's provable, right?
Right.
And again, I got D's in science. I wasn't into science or any of that thing. But I did believe in a power, a higher power and a quest for a spiritual answer, and that people are drawn to something greater than themselves. And there's some unknown mystery about why are all these things happening and what caused the tragedy and what causes these things. And because it's the unifying forces, it unifies people, that it takes them out of themselves to something larger than themselves. And fear can do that, right? So the lore and the appeal of these things is crazy interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've gone to a few Mothman, cult festivals. I've gone to a couple festivals and shown the film. It's rabid. People are really, really into it. And people are really into and so I read the book. I read Keel's book again. I said, God, there's so much material here. Went back to the original script and just took out all the overt stuff of Mothman. I said, the less you see it, the more interesting it'll be.
Great decision.
Right? So worked with a couple of writers, Lou Clark and Ernie Morero, and we shaped it to be something that was a little more about perception and subjectivity. And that was pretty much the draft that Richard Gere signed on to do, and pretty much what the movie is. So it's imagination, and it's these things that they didn't all have to make sense. They kind of was like, it was episodic in that level. Like, why was John Klein there? What happened to his wife? That's really the narrative through line. And then at the end, she says, planes are going to crash, people are going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. Ultimately, control, right? We have no control in our lives. So a guy is thrown into an uncontrollable situation and has no control. And ultimately, did the bridge come down? Why did the bridge come down? What happened? So a lot of unanswered questions in that film. So I think that the appeal is the very thing that made it interesting to people, and why it's maintained 24 years later. Its appeal is the very thing that, saddled it with certain commercial limits, because like people like things like closed-ended. They like black and white. They don't like ambiguity. And our movie was very ambiguous. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And like, what really is the Mothman still there, which creates mystery, yet, and again, this is 2002. People were still reporting box office then, but it wasn't the predominant cultural conversation it is now, No. But anyway, I was super proud of it. And, cut to years later. We've been trying for a few years now to make it as a TV series, and we have some great people behind it. And it's just, it's a tough time to get stuff made. But our hope is that either as a sequel to the movie or as a TV series, that Mothman, I can put my paws on that stuff one more time.
That would be awesome. Since the film came out, I've seen several Mothman documentaries or television shows. I'm not sure what I believe about cryptids in general or the Mothman in particular. But when I watch an interview of a person who claims to have had an encounter with a Mothman, I believe that they believe. What are your thoughts on the Mothman?
Exactly. I believe that they believe, right?
Yeah.
Like Richard Gere believes Will Patton is having that conversation. I was there. I saw him. He said to me, people are going to die in Denver. He said to me, yep, like, I believe you. I believe you. He didn't say it to me, but I heard it. So it's like subject to, in Buzz, we have a line where William Burroughs says, if you see it, it matters to you. So the imprint, the subjective, it's personal to you. If you came and said, last night, a person tapped you on the shoulder and you turned and they said this to you, I wouldn't ask you for proof, right? In this culture, not be, well, where's the proof? Like, okay, I would believe you, but okay, what's the result of that? If you started to lose your mind, okay, and that's sad, and I've seen people that have started to believe things and just they lose grips with reality, right? That happens. The brain is a very powerful thing. Brain chemistry is very powerful. And I believe that everybody's truth is their own truth. I believe now with cameras and recording equipment, it's a really, if you look at, think about truth, think about all the violence has been captured on doorbell cameras and police body cams and people's phones. Yeah, right? A lot. So you can run, but you can't hide. And so these sightings in the middle of the night, Mothman showed up and said this thing. I'm surprised there's not more like, oh, hey, I took my phone out and like recorded it. Right? So you'd have to say like, all right, what is that? What's up with that? These things are all around us and can capture this kind of event. Now that's objective event, but like, I don't know. I saw it and I heard it. Okay. Where's the proof? So I remain on the sidelines neutral to that. And, it's like having a kid, right? And they say like, this happened. I say, okay, I understand.
Exactly.
But what happens is like your thing of like cryptids, like, and this friend of mine just pitched me an idea about Mothman and cryptids, and like and I'm like, the people are really into it, like really, really, really like.
Oh yeah,
that's
a little scary.
It's
like
very
you
rapid.
Get a life scary. Yeah.
But it's very specific. It's like every interest has its followers and cults and believers, and every sport has its like, think about it. I was watching this is tangent, but like I was watching women's college softball, right?
Yeah.
I'd never watched women's college softball. I was blown away how into it the fans were. The commentators, like, it's a world, right? Women's college softball is a world into itself. It's its own subculture. It's got its own heroes, its own mythology, its own history, its own lore. I knew nothing about it, right? Like, there's people like, oh my God, women's college softball is incredible. That's their life, right? Same thing with Mothman.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that people find their tribe, whatever that happens to be. Mark, I know you're busy. I've got one more before we let you go. You put out a book called The Visualist, in which you describe.
It's coming out early next year.
That's awesome. I found a copy of it. Somebody's trying to sell it for $80, but the seller got like 51-star reviews. So I did not plunk down on it. But in the book, you describe the filmmaking process and your experiences from commercials to scripted films. Can you briefly tell us about The Visualist?
Right around the same time of COVID, when you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And 2020, right? So at the time I was almost 59 years old. And I made a lot of stuff over time. And my office in LA was overrun. I've never thrown away stuff. Tapes, vinyl, cassettes, college radio, cassettes of DJ broadcast, books, all the paperwork from all the shows, all the treatments, everything. Never threw it away. Wow. And so I was deciding what to do with it all. And should I give it to a college? What do I do with all my archive, right? And simultaneously, a friend said, you should do a book on music videos. You should do like a book of your images from music videos. I was like, oh, that'd be fun. So you start to research a little bit, talk to some people and meet a few little publishers and do a little lookbook, like creative witness to the music video generation, right? And this guy in New York, a publisher named Daniel Power, from a company called Powerhouse Books. They do art books, photography books. He said, it'd be more interesting if you did a maker share, because not that many people do videos and commercials and TV shows and movies and documentaries. Because if you were able to share your experiences in all those different mediums, people would really dig that.
Yeah.
I said, that's a lot more writing. He goes, yeah. So literally at the end of 2020, I was like, all right. So I just started writing it and got an app where I could just talk and it would transcribe it, and then I'd talk and transcribe it and then write a little more. And I mean, it was 40 years of stuff. So I didn't leave any holes unturned.
Wow.
Then what happened? And then what happened? And I had my old calendars, printed out, my old books from, old date books that I never threw away. So I was able to basically reconstruct the journey. And it took me about a year and way too many words. And then they started editing it and we started shaping it. And it was like, oh, it'll come out in 2020. And then publishing ran into the same problems as every other business. Contraction, right? So then you keep writing, and I went and did a movie called Lone Wolf with Bryan Cranston that I shot and began to edit, and then the company went bankrupt, and we're now only a year later coming out of legal morass to finish the movie, but it's my best movie since Arlington Road or Mothman. Wow. It's Lily Gladstone and Bryan Cranston in a very 70s style, paranoid, conspiracy, political thriller about assassination. Right?
Sign me up for that.
It's fucking cool. I'm telling you. It's really cool. So waiting for that to come out. So I realized we were editing Buzz, and Buzz was taking longer. So I realized nothing works on the timetable that you think it is, right?
Right. That's always the case.
Buzz will come out, the book, everything's been actually delayed, but everything's just taking the time that it takes, right? So you chip away, get a distributor for Buzz. It's finally coming out. The book, I finish it. It's going to come out probably early next year. Maybe the end of this year, but probably early next year. Lone wolf looks like. So again, you knock on wood and you're grateful for every day, right? And say, great, go show the film at Chattanooga. Go do this. Go try and get other movies made. And so the book, kind of like this conversation, tells a lot of stories, gives a lot of perspective, I hope, and wisdom to up and coming artists, filmmakers, creators, about perseverance and determination and multiplicity of wear a lot of hats so you can maybe get one job. How do you balance art and commerce? And it's different now than it was 30 years ago. I talk to young filmmakers and young artists all the time and be like, you just got to stick to your guns and be creative and don't give up. Because the minute you just give up, and some people shifted and some people pivot and they're like, I'm not directing, but I became this. Great. That's the natural course of life, right? Like I said, just keep going until somebody tells you that you suck and go home. Right? Like,
yeah,
you didn't end up here. You probably didn't think you were going to end up here 40 years ago, right?
no, I've had some zigs and zags, which, I mean, I've survived a plane crash. I've survived the worst job I ever took. I knew within 5 minutes of walking in the door that I fucked up. But I do that a million times in a row because it led to everything good in my career. So you just got to boldly go, like William Shatner used to say, and see wherever the fuck it leads.
Exactly. Yes. I've suffered a lot of loss and a lot of zigs and zags, and you come through the other side. And, I'm grateful for my problems. And
me too.
I'll never lose, like I said, that video that I just finished, like listening to a piece of music and having my brain fire and see images is a gift that I appreciate and will continue to want to do. Now I'm starting to do it more in like still art or collage. It's something that I don't need to beg people for money to do.
Right.
The business of making films, unfortunately, requires resources. Even a movie I'm trying to do now for a tiny budget. Right? Even if you say, I'm going to do a movie for $500,000, or people are like, hey, Obsession was made for $750, and it made, well, number one, I'm sick of people, all they talk about is money. I'm so sick of that. It's just like gross, right? Like, Paramount mergers and how much money movies, like, can we talk about something else, please?
Yeah. How about story?
If we talked about art and story and meaning as much as we talked about money, we'd be a much better culture.
No question.
But the point being, even if they made Obsession for somebody still had to come up with $750,000. That's a fuckload of money. Now, I've paid for 2 movies in my life. I paid for my movie Nostalgia. My brother and I paid for it. A movie I made in 2018 with John Hamm. $1 million. And I broke even. Thank God. Another movie I made in 2011, I put in $400,000 of my own money. It was called I Melt With You, with Rob Lowe, Thomas Jane. Incredible soundtrack. That movie's way ahead of its time, and people on Letterboxd are discovering it now. It got destroyed when it came out. Critics destroyed it because it predicted male toxic behavior.
Wow.
Right? But people hated it. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, then you didn't go to college with these kind of people. Yeah. If you didn't have a certain kind of relationship with your friends and you hated these kind of guys, then you hated the movie, period. Right. And that was 2011. Then comes Me Too, rightly so. And it's like, these are the guys, right? Yeah. And now it's found a new audience. You go on Letterboxd and people are like, wow, this movie is kind of interesting. Or this movie, like, sure, because it took 16 years before it could be seen on that level.
Right.
So that doesn't mean like shows like Buzz or I'm Out With You or whatever. That doesn't mean, it just means you feel what you feel and you express it as a filmmaker. I made I'm Out With You because I was so frustrated by the system even back then. A movie I was going to do, a remake of The Orphanage for Guillermo del Toro, was falling apart and we weren't there. I said, I have to make a movie. And I took Steven Soderbergh to lunch. He's like my hero. And I said, would you ever put your own money into a movie? He goes, absolutely. You have to will any movie into happening. So I started scouting, took my friend's script, my friend Glenn Porter's great script, and just said, we're going to shoot this movie in August. And you just say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you start paying for the scouts yourself. And you say, all right, we're going to make it. And you don't really have the money yet. And you're like, we're going to make it. And it's very empowering to make a movie when you just say you're going to make it.
Yeah. Speak it into existence.
You have to, and then go get the money however you can, because 99% of this business is a business. And it's somebody saying no.
Well, we really appreciate you taking so much time. I know you're busy. We love This Is Buzz. It knocked my socks off. And of course, The Mothman Prophecies. It's one of those films I can watch it, and every time I see something I didn't see before.
Really?
So, yeah. And so, and I'm a pretty astute and canny observer of film. And you know, not to brag or anything, but when you put together a body of work where I say, my God, he's hidden this here, he's put that there, and I didn't notice it. How the hell did I miss that? That's just a great piece of work. I think Mothman will stand the test of time. And as I said, it brought the Mothman into the cryptid lore, which, I mean, not a lot of people can say that they've been able to make art that has done that. So congrats.
Well,
and we're thrilled that you let us show it.
You know what? I don't know. Like, even if I went and made a sequel now, I will say this. I don't think anything could capture. Look, I was younger then. I still am into risk taking and like visualizing. It was shot on film, right? It was done in 2002. It feels like a 70s movie, but it also feels contemporary. I just went and watched Back Rooms, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching Back Rooms, and I felt a lot of Mothman in that film.
That's cool.
I felt a lot of like a guy, a singular character is in a situation where he's like, you don't know what the fuck's going on, and I'm really not getting any answers. Like
right.
they're not even giving me like these plot points. They're like, oh, okay, here you go. My brain is filling in. Now I have to go here. It was kind of this episodic, like weird dream-like logic that events start just piling up and kind of colliding with each other, which is more and more dread. So I really respected that experience a lot. I called it an experience more than a film, because I was like, this is a fucking weird nightmare imagination. And that's really what Keel's book is this collective, communal collection of, nonfiction stories, which became as powerful as fiction, right? It's like old campfire stories. Then this happened, then this happened. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So in adapting and working on the TV show, like if Mothman is just an Indrid Cold and Mary White and all these things are just energy, and they feed on energy of fear, right? And you think about technology now and AI and phones, and Indrid Cold becoming like showing up and it's you, and you realize it's not you, is that AI or is that a Mothman version of you talking to me? it's literally endless opportunities to fuck with people, right?
That's why you got to make that TV show, man.
No shit, man. Or I should just start making a phone. I should make a vertical series, a Mothman vertical series to start making on my own. My friend and I were talking about I should do it as a filmmaker going to, like a very meta thing, like Mark Pellington, who was the voice of Indrid Cold, starts to make this thing and realizes he becomes Indrid Cold in the phone, right?
That would be great.
Right? Something like that. Just as a starting point.
You could pick your targets that you could fuck with. Like, like anybody that you didn't like or whatever, you could just call them up and you give them the Indrid Cold voice, scare the shit out of them.
I wish to this day that I had given myself credit, because the SAG residuals I would have gotten to the voice, I fucked up. Maybe I could retroactively lobby.
Yeah, we've all done that.
Well, I look forward to visiting Chattanooga, and
man. When you do your next stuff, you got to come here and drink in the whole experience.
Well, let's stay in touch.
We definitely will. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. See you guys.